Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map. In today's video, I want to talk to you about death. Death in our Western society right now, it's very disconnected from our lives. We don't see when people are dying unless you work in palliative care or in hospitals and stuff. But as a regular person, there is no sign of death per se. Everything is happening behind the closed door, and the families don't get a chance to care for the dead. I remember as a child having an amazing privilege and an experience that stayed with me until now, and I remember it so vividly as if it happened yesterday, and I was maybe 8, maybe 10, not older, and my grandfather died. My grandmother and my ancestors, they come from like the village, from the countryside. They were always carers of the earth and farmers and living with animals and caring for the land. And my grandfather actually worked the train stations, like with the trains and stuff. But when he died in the countryside, I remember that my grandmother and my great grandmother were washing his body, dressing him up, and he was put into the coffin and with open lid, and he was lying in the lounge room in the countryside. There were chairs all around the coffin, and the picture of Holy Mother Mary hanged. I think the picture was brought from the church, maybe, or maybe it was my grandmother's. I can't remember that now. And a lot of people from the village used to come to our house then. Two of us, my sister and I, we were playing and running through the room, and the grandmothers and lots of people from the village were coming in, singing. There were candles burning, and they were singing all the Christian songs and Catholic songs, but I think, it's quite a pagan kind of way of honoring the dead. And I think he was lying either 2 or 3 days, maybe 2 nights at home. And people were coming all over this time, morning, evening, nights, and singing and singing and singing. And this ritual was so natural and so normal. Nobody was, asking too many questions. Then the whole village, whoever could, joined the procession of going to the cemetery, the village cemetery. And this whole experience, I don't know, it just made me really kind of, I don't want to say familiar with death, because I'm not. And I haven't really lost anyone very close to me except for my grandmother, but I was in Australia at that time, so I couldn't really be at her funeral. And I haven't lost, any parent or any great friend. So in a way, I feel like a little bit like a baby talking about death, because I haven't really experienced going through this process myself. But at the same time, I feel this really powerful draw and connection and need to explore and learn about death. I have North Node in Scorpio, that might be a part of it. On the other hand, I also just feel very strongly inspired by the process of dying, by the fact that each of us is going to die, and that to me it makes only sense that we learn as much as possible about death and dying process, because it's quite universal for all of us, even though we might follow different religions or the different, we might die at different age, but the process of death seems to have very constant paths that each of us will go through. And I also think that it's so important to change how we see death in our society, to bring death, make it a bit more familiar to as much as we can. Obviously, none of us cross to the other side, so we really don't know. But I guess it's just something very ephemeral and beautiful about dying, and this whole initiation into death and learning as much as we can and bringing death for an open conversation, to me it's just really important. So recently at the, I think, Simon's talk with Kelly, we spoke about death, and a few people said if I could just make a video about the resources that I am inspired by. So I wanted to speak about a few books. So there is the first book I think I read, which I don't have it here, but I have a Polish version anyway. I was in high school and I read this book by Ken Wilber, and it was in English it's translated Grace and Grit, and it was about his wife going through the process of dying to cancer. And I remember as a person in high school that really this book made a huge impression on me, and yet again death wasn't so much feared by me, but I was excited about the process. It was fascinating to me. Maybe excited, it's not a good word. It's not like I'm excited to die. I don't think anyone is excited to die, but in a way death is a wonderful initiation, and who knows, maybe it's the best that happens to us. We don't know that. So Grace and Grit by Ken Wilber, it's definitely a book to take a look at. The other book that I read is the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I know that there were some controversies about Sogyal Rinpoche recently, but I think in general this book is really beautiful, and this is obviously a Buddhist perspective on dying, but because there's so many amazing Buddhist teachers and the tradition is kind of kept alive for a very long time, I think they also have process mapped up with colors that you can see and stuff. Like, it's very interesting. So this book by Sogyal Rinpoche, a new spiritual classic from this Tibetan teacher, it's very interesting, and I think it's worth giving a read if somebody close to you is dying, or if you yourself preparing for death. Another book that I wanted to mention that I received as a gift from my dear friend Patricia, it's from her teacher Lama Shenpen Hookham. There's more to dying than death. That's also Buddhist perspective. Lama Shenpen has a very well kind of working, beautiful retreat center in Wales in the UK. So if you're ever there, you can check it out. It's, yeah, if you probably Google Lama Shenpen, you can she will come up. And this is a book accessible to Buddhist and non-Buddhist alike. So the author explains the meaning of death from a meditator's perspective, and it's written with clarity and insight. This book speaks from the heart. So this is something which I really would highly recommend. As you can see, I haven't really finished fully this book. It's not where I'm here. I have read more of it, but I haven't really finished it. It's one of those books when you there is also, you know, meditation exercises. You don't just like rush through it, but it's a good read. It's not highly, you know, like intellectual, but intellectual enough for us to kind of incorporate our mind and our body. So these books are amazing to take a look at. I also wanted to say that if you Polish, there is a guy in Poland called Sebastian Minor, and in 2012 I remember doing thanatotherapy workshop with him. He's working and making death to be a different experience to the dying person and also to people who care for their close ones. So there's someone to look out for in Poland if you Polish. And also a lot of this death related issues is connected actually to the crown chakra work. So if you're working on chakras and you're working on the 7th chakra on the crown, there is also this letting go and you know, the world kind of full transitioning going on. And I at some point in Australia, I've done this correspondent course in Australian bushflower essences, and reading, like I pulled this out recently because I was doing quite a lot of chakra reading for my clients here in Poland. It just came out like this. I don't even have those readings on offer in my shop, but I thought maybe I will do it. But the seventh chakra psychological state from this, I'm just going to look at this. It's bliss and endocrine gland, it's pineal gland, and here the human being connects with the divine, as it is the entry point for the animating life force. The force nourishes mind, body, and spirit, and it flows down into the physical body through the lower 6 chakras. By understanding the source of our being as spirit, having a physical experience, we can let go and let God. And this description of the chakra speaks a lot about death and dying, and the authors mention also this book. And it's really interesting that I won that giveaway by Kyla. Oh, sorry. I won the giveaway by Kyla, and I am doing a lot of ancestral work, but when I won the giveaway, you could have picked a chakra you want to work with, and I usually go for lower chakras, but this time I just felt like really inspired and intuitively chosen the crown chakra. So she's posted me the crown chakra kind of like tincture. I have the crown chakra anointing oil, and also this is actually not connected to crown chakra, but there is this spray, and I started using these things, and then all of this, how sometimes you have synchronicity and it just all starts coming together. So a lot of the chakra work that I started doing has this death embedded in it and woven into it. There's Lara Veleda Vesta's school, the wild school. I will link all the important websites below in the description box, so check them out, please. So Lara Veleda Vesta, I'm doing her ancestral class, and she's offering, in this ancestral class, I've learned so much because she very freely offers a lot of resources, books, movies, websites. And one of the websites she offered in the last class of the course on ancestors is the website of the Order of the Good Death. I will link it below as well. And there on their websites, when you go into those little kind of squares, when you can click and it will take you to the extension info, you have the kind of a website for movies which are connected to death and dying, and also to podcasts. There's a lot of YouTube videos. There's also links to books and heaps of resources. It's a really amazing website when you can learn, just being on this website, a lot about death and dying. So please check this one out, and check Lara Veleda Vesta's offerings at school, because she seems like a really amazing lady, and I just highly appreciate her approach and how she does it, and just the peacefulness and love that she offers all the courses with. And then to finish it off, I wanted to show you a few death cards, because in tarot, we also, as tarot people and people who utilize tarot decks, there is, maybe tarot can teach us a lot about death as well, because I also thought about death being number 13 and not the last card of the major arcana. I thought, how come the death is not the last one? Obviously there is, maybe tarot is saying there's something after you die, so there is death, and then what if every card in the major arcana sequence after death symbolizes what happens after death? This is just a theory I'm throwing out there, food for thought. I haven't found too much info on it, and obviously we can't probably prove any of it, but then we meet the angel, and then we go into, some dark spots, and then maybe letting go of the body with tower, and then maybe we, who knows, but there's a lot of possibilities. So maybe look at the major arcana and what's happening after death. And as a fairy tale symbol, I looked at this inner child cards deck, Fairy Tale Tarot by Isha Lerner, and we have a death card as a sleeping beauty symbol, and it's a very fascinating fairy tale where the king, when his daughter was born, orders and invites 12 fairies, but he forgets about the 13th one, that gets really upset at the end and kind of curses the princess. So the story of Sleeping Beauty suggests the long process of maturation, particularly at the point in the cycle when an innocent girl, so the princess, enters the strange world of adolescence, begins to menstruate because she starts to bleed, and then she falls asleep. And here, this change of life, transfiguration from for a child, is a process of death and rebirth. So you can see this fairy tale on so many different levels. This is also that death can be seen as a long sleep, that it's happening, we finally will awaken from that sleep. And that could be also a point in the fairy tale which says that the soul, the spirit, doesn't die, you kind of disappear, but then you get reborn. So in Greek mythology, there is also sleep and death, Hypnos and Thanatos, and they were considered brothers. So every time you fall asleep, it's also like a little death. You come back to the reality in converted commas, to awaken. So ultimately the soul can be seen as the true sleeping beauty, and obviously any process of metamorphosis, transition, dying and being reborn seems quite dangerous, so we're not like that willing to embrace it. But I think learning about it, even from the point of a fairy tale, which is not that scary, can be a beautiful additional info and kind of exploration for us to look at our own death and dying. Another card that I pulled is the card from the Rumi Tarot. I just went for those religious decks, So here, death, the grave is a veil hiding the communion of paradise. And in each of the kind of decks, so this one is connected obviously to Sufism, the Rumi Tarot, and this shows the card shows the angel of death, Azrael, and traditionally Azrael is said to be seated in the seventh heaven, one of his feet resting on the bridge that spans paradise and hell. On his left raises a tree whose leaves bear the names of all people, and on the day of an individual's death, the leaf bearing his name turns yellow and flutters down, upon which Lord Azrael goes forth to execute his dread mandate. So such a beautiful metaphor. And, here Rumi says also the death of the body is a gift to the adepts of the mystery, and death is never seen as something scary and final. It always seems as to be a part of ever-turning wheel of fortune, ever-turning life and changes. So another saying that Rumi kind of, or Nigel Jackson puts forth in his book or description of the death card is that saying of the prophet that people are asleep, only when they die do they wake up, and also die before you die. So here we can think of maybe, loosening of our ego grip, or even really fully living before we physically die. But in all the traditions, death never meant the end of everything. Also in the Buddhist tradition, here in Mandala of the Cards by Robert M. Place, there is a skeleton, sorry, my phone, there is a skeleton, the corpse. So here also death speaks about the third encounter of Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha, with death, or that was when he saw the dying person, somebody carrying the corpse to be burned, and then he went on and tried to annihilate the body in a way and become a corpse. So he tried to die before he dies, and he played or danced the dance of death. But Tibetans consider skeletons a wholesome reminder of the truth under appearances, the bare bones of a situation. So the skeleton can help us overcome fear and tap our creativity. So during Halloween, we deal with a lot of skeletons, Day of the Dead, in Mexico as well. It's kind of a reminder that these are bones and that the spirit lives on in ancestors, in beings, and maybe then we get reborn. So in all the cultures, death is never the end of it. So Mexican goddess of death, La Santa Muerte, that's the last card. From Ellen Lorenzi Prince, death is the destiny of life. Well, we definitely can say so, because that's where we're going, and that's how we are ending up, all of us. And this is La Santa Muerte. Saint Death or Holy Death is beloved death goddess of Mexico and North America. And Most Holy Death oversees the many needs of her people. She hears rituals for justice in court cases, for protection from enemies, for success in business or love, and for removal of curses. So she's a powerful goddess of clearing or transitioning. They know the lady may grant any prayer. When Santa Muerte appears for us, and here Ellen writes, see the truth of the habits that get in the way of building a better life for yourself. Tear down the walls and slay the inner demons. Ask for knowledge and strength. Do not give up or lose faith that it can be done. It also means endings very often. The death card, something is dying so that something can be reborn. So this dying and being reborn is very strongly connected to one another. It's a process, and that's why I think the death 13th card is never at the end of the tarot sequence. It's kind of like a bridge into another way of understanding. And if you put all the major arcana of Marseille Tarot, you see how simplistic the cards seem until you hit the death card, and how much more complicated and detailed they become when you move past death and go into this maybe heightened, altered state of experiencing as an energy being, who knows. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I will speak to you very soon again. Bye.